thought versus experience related to emotional response. I can create a thought in my mind that gives me a wave of pure positive joy, emotional, just wow, bringing to tears type of, and this is really cool.
We want to interrupt you just briefly. Don't lose your place because you're going to a good place. But we want to say to you that it isn't only that you can imagine something and have an emotional response to it in your imagery. It is that the universe does not know the difference between whether you're imagining it or whether you're looking right at it. The generation of the vibration is what matters, you see. So if you form an image in your mind and you get your juices flowing, you are setting up the movement of energies. In other words, the circumstances and events that source energy has lined up for you are coming into alignment, whether you are actually living it or whether you are imagining it.
So
that's why worrisome thoughts, that's why as they put the color up that says there is a terrorism alert, even though nothing is happening, your attention to it activates a vibration that makes you more likely to receive something not wanted in whatever is the crack of least resistance.
So I create these emotional, I create these thoughts that create this emotional joy feeling.
Good.
And I'm like, wow, this is spectacular.
Good.
And then I wonder, and I'm in my room, on my bed, in my bedroom, whatever. And then I wonder, if I just open my eyes, walk out the door onto the street and go get an ice cream or something, I haven't experienced, I have, but it's a lot easier just to stay in my chair, in my room, and create these fantastic thoughts rather than experience them on the street.
What you're saying is that from my privacy and my solitude, I have more control over my thought process than when I put myself out in the world where I'm likely to observe other things or watch CNN, for heaven's sakes. In other words, the more I protect myself from the bombardment of experiences and thoughts, then the more likely I am to create images that please me. But what we want you to understand is that the more you do lie in the solitude of your own room and conjure imagery that thrills you as you do it, the more you make those vibrations within you the more active vibrations, and the more you make those the more active, the more the others are inactive. So then when you move out into the world, as you're zigging and zagging, law of attraction matches you up with the things that are more like what you've been envisioning than the things that you were formerly observing. So much so that you move around this planet, and even living in the same cities on the same streets, you're having entirely different rendezvous because you're zigging and zagging in vibrational alignment with what's dominant within you. Your life, and as it manifests, follows the patterning of your vibrations over which you have complete control. However, most people offer most of their vibration from what they are observing. That's why you want so much to control each other. If they'd just behave, you'd feel better, you see. But when you show yourself that you can feel better regardless of how they behave, then you begin to generate a consistent vibration of well-being, and then law of attraction just brings you good things wherever you go. And people who watch you say, how is it that things always turn out so well for you? Your timing is good. You're good in traffic. You missed the accident altogether. The other day, Jerry and Esther awakened. They were in some recreational vehicle park in some city, and Esther awakened, and she had such a sense of let's get on the road. And then she overrode that feeling of wanting to go with logic, and instead she put the big satellite dish up and checked email and got involved in some of that and made a few phone calls and did her dutiful thing to do. And then they left about an hour and a half behind that moment that she felt such an urge to leave, and found themselves in the middle of an unbelievable traffic snarl. And she realized that if they had left when she felt like it, they would have been ahead of the accident. And it would have saved them hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of just sitting there on the freeway, unable to move. And so as you live experiences, as you have feelings, and as you have outcomes, and you begin to make the correlation between what you were thinking and feeling and what's manifesting, in time you get really, really good at having that feeling and recognizing, oh, I remember that feeling. And I'm going to behave differently this time in the midst of that than last time. And before you know it, you have utter control of your experience.
So the exercise of the thought is more important, or more, I'll stay with that, more important than the experience of the thought.
We would go further. We would say the awareness of the emotion, whether in the vision or in the observation, is what matters most. Because if you are aware of how you feel, then you're able to, in the middle of observing something that gives you a feeling that doesn't feel so good, you can selectively sift right there in the middle of that for something that feels better. But we have something else to say to you. This is the most significant thing from what you're extracting from us here. We love that you are someone who is lying in your bed and visualizing, because there is such power in that. And once you're in the middle of a manifestation, even if it's something that you're just observing, in other words, in every moment, this is manifestation. This is what is, and what I'm observing is what is. So here I am observing what is and having vibrational response to it, an emotional response to it, and I am affecting, in essence, in truth, not in essence, in everything, I'm affecting what's coming next. So what we really want to say is, if you wait until the middle of an observational moment to work to clean up your vibration, it sort of doesn't yield you anything very much. As Jerry and Esther came to the stage today, they have it set up for something that's going to happen tonight. And these sparkling curtains were open, and behind it is a screen that comes down about to here. And it's a very mismatched sort of thing. And Esther said, whoa, that doesn't look very good, and it won't be consistent with the way the stage has looked earlier. And everyone said, well, we've asked them, and they say, we have no choice because this scenery is too big, it cannot be moved, and so we'll just have to live with it. And Esther thought, I don't want to live with it. I don't want to live with it. Now she's standing in an uncomfortable moment. She does not want to be there, and what she's observing is making her feel uncomfortable. And so she did what almost everybody does in the middle of an uncomfortable situation. She just threw a little fit. And in other words, that looks terrible, she said. That really looks terrible. That isn't right. They shouldn't do that. She just sort of danced around in her little fit for a moment and felt worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then she looked at everybody that matters to her in her life and saw them looking at her like, oh, she's right. She doesn't live it. She just teaches it. And Esther thought, well, I can't accept something that I want not so much. And anyway, and what's really wrong with it is it isn't the picture I've had in my mind. It isn't the picture I've had in my mind. The universe does not usually forsake me. The image I have in my mind, especially for this long of period of time, usually pans out. She started to feel better. In other words, she started reaching for thoughts that feel better. And then she went out and she sat in one of your chairs and she looked at the very ugly stage. And she said, what would make me feel better? And the answer came very clearly. I would feel better if the curtains were closed. Well, the curtains didn't look like they would close. This big thing, maybe you can see it, sticks out very far. And so she said, can we close the curtains? And she was told, no, they will not reach around that. There will be a big gap in the middle. And Esther said, could we please try? And so, yes, we can try. And so a nice man pushed the button and they pulled the curtains around, and turned out they did close together. And Esther went down and looked at them and she said, there, now my world is complete again. In other words, but it was slow going and hard going. In other words, when you wait until you are in the middle of a moment, and that's when you are doing your creating, it's much harder than when you have visualized it. So why did the curtains end up like that? In other words, Esther has not given any thought to these curtains. Oh, the first cruise, she really thought about it. And the second cruise, she really thought about it. But in time, the more you do things, the more you become lazy about it. And so now Esther is saying, Abraham, does this mean that I have to keep working on everything? And we say, Esther, how much work is it to envision the stage the way you want it? In other words, a fleeting second. Once you get your life going the way you want it, don't think about what you want because you're trying to put out brush fires. Think about what you want for the thrill of thinking about it. And Esther thought about it. I have not been thinking about this stage. I've not given one thought to it before we got on this ship. And now she is thinking, there are a lot of things that I can prepave with thought. And that is the primary message that we are wanting to impart to all of you. The fun of creating is the thinking in advance, the starting with a clean slate and seeing things from the framework in which you stand and envisioning it as good as you can get it. And then the thrill of watching the universe come together to give you what you want is much more fun than cleaning up a mess because you weren't thinking about what you want, you see? You can fix anything. You could let your body be so broken and you could, with the power of your mind, bring yourself back to wholeness. There is no disease that you could be experiencing that you could not release with the power of your thought. There is not one exception to that. You are the creator of your own reality and you can achieve anything that you are wanting. But when you stand in the middle of something that feels not the way you want it, and you take that feeling of defeat and you stand in the middle of it, and then you feel like the universe has forsaken you, or you have done something wrong, or somebody else has done something wrong, you disempower yourself. So what we would do if we were standing in the middle, we would do what Esther did. We would do the best that we could do from where we stand with whatever resources we have to get it to the place that we want it to be. And then we would do a better job of pre-paving that next time. Not because you're trying to keep bad things from happening, but because the thrill in the thrill of the creation of your own life experience is the gathering of the data, the molding of it in your mind, the achieving of the expectation of it, and then the watching the universal cooperation about everything.